very good evening. This is Primetime News coming to you live and direct from our Newsfirst studios here in Colombo. For the Newsfirst team, I'm Mariam Ganavijaya. We start off with a look at your headlines.
Farmers to unite in renewed struggle as issues go unsolved.
දැන් නිදහස් උත්සවයක් තියන්න තොපි ලෑස්ති කරලා තියෙනවා කෝටි 2කට වැඩිය ලොකු මුදලක් යට කරලා. නිදහස් උත්සව තියන්න අපිට නිදහසක් ඇත්තේ නැහැ. අපි අරගලයට එනවා. අපි පාරට බහිනවා. තොපි පළව හරින්න ඕන ක්‍රියාමාර්ග අපි ජීවිත පූජා කරලා හරි ගන්නවා.
Lawyers take to the streets against the influence on Additional Magistrate in the Vasantha Mudalige case. Doctors and university teachers take to the streets against the tax regime. Election expenditure bill to be debated on Thursday despite objections from the opposition. Motorcycle gunmen strike once again in Colombo. China responds to US ambassador's spoiler comment.
Multiple sectors in Sri Lanka are gearing up for protests. Lawyers protested in Colombo on Wednesday, and the Government Medical Officers Association says it would launch a trade union action as well. In the midst of all this, Sri Lankan farmers have also decided to launch a joint trade union action.
A plethora of farm organisations from Ampara, Polonnaruwa and Trincomalee met in Polonnaruwa on Wednesday to stress the issues of the farmers that have not been solved by the authorities.
This is roundworm disease. There is a fungicide, and so far the supply of fertilizers have been reduced. They say that 10,000 rupees will be deposited to the accounts of the farmers, but the farmers have to spend more than 10,000 rupees just by going to the bank to check their balance. Every time they go, they return empty-handed. The agrarian community has now united. Hold a parliamentary or presidential election and see if we will ever bring you to power. Now they are planning to host the Independence Day celebration at a cost of 200 million rupees. We don't even have independence to celebrate Independence Day.
The chairman of the Trincomalee District Agriculture Movement also commented.
The rulers who snuck in through the loopholes of the constitution and took control of the country are planning to sell the Mahaveli reservoir and the lands that belong to the Mahaveli. The farmers don't even visit these fields. The multinational companies are given these lands. They have even acquired the reservoirs. The government is implementing this program just to ensure their well-being. We will take to the streets and take every possible action to oust you, even if it costs our lives. We are not afraid of your batons or tear gas.
The Batiklo District Farmers Organisation also announced their position.
The government has cast the farmers aside. There is no price for paddy, and the Paddy Marketing Board must purchase the paddy from us. We are helpless due to the actions taken by the rulers. Look at the fate that has befallen after they forced us to use organic fertilizer. They are spending millions for Independence Day, but our fields are affected by diseases. The government must bear this cost.
A group of lawyers protested opposite the Colombo Magistrates Court this afternoon, citing the situation that Additional Magistrate Tharanga Mahavatta had to face yesterday. The case file against Vasantha Mudalige and Venerable Galveva Siri Damatero was taken up for examination once again on Tuesday in the presence of Colombo Additional Magistrate Tharanga Mahavatta. However, Senior Deputy Solicitor General Dilipa Piris requested that the case be examined in the presence of a different magistrate based on the affidavits provided by 4 detectives from the Terrorist Investigations Department. Accordingly, the case was transferred to the Colombo Chief Magistrate. The lawyers who gathered opposite the Magistrates Court today to protest against the allegations levelled on the Additional Magistrate and thereafter marched to the Keselwatha Junction.
She had just offered some beverage to the monks as Gilanpasa. This is a Buddhist country. We are bound to protect Buddhism even through the constitution. Against such a backdrop, there is an attempt to remove her from this case and transfer her from it just because she offered this monk something to drink. Therefore, we would like to tell the Attorney General's department that their behavior yesterday was very saddening. They frightened her and obtained 4 affidavits and said that they will be used against her. That is why the legal community presented their facts before the magistrate at that time. If someone can't offer a beverage to a monk as Gilanpasa, What more are we to talk of?
ඒ නිසා අපි කියන්නේ මේ රටේ භික්ෂුවට ගිලම්පස පූජා කරන්න බැරි නම් තව කවර කතාවද?
පොලිසියේ රජයේ අයට නීති
If the police or the government do not know the law, they seek advice of the Attorney General's department. What happened yesterday was they took advice of the police and threatened Tharanga Mahawatta. They raised their hand at her saying she cannot speak in that manner. This has never happened in the past. Those at the Attorney General's department need to know very clearly that they are drawing a salary from the public tax money and they are waving their hand to a historic struggle in this country. Be ashamed of what you did yesterday. The blunder deserves a public apology.
ඓතිහාසික අරගලයකට එනිසා ලැජ්ජ වෙන්න අයියා කරපු වැඩේට ප්‍රසිද්ධිය සමාව ගන්න තරම් පරදක් වෙලා තියෙනවා.
Meanwhile, the lawyers of the People's Movement for a Law-Abiding and Just Society expressed their views in this regard at a press conference held in Polonnaruwa today.
The universal justice of law does not seem to be applied. People with wealth and power sneak behind the law. Innocent people are oppressed by the law. We know that President Gotabaya Rajapaksa has many cases against him, but none of them are being taken up by the Attorney General's department. Many acts of corruption and scams have taken place in this country. The law is not enforced against them. We demand that the law be implemented fairly for everyone, regardless of their wealth and power.
Professionals in Sri Lanka continue to speak out against the government's failure to address the worsening medicine shortage in the country and the unjust tax regime. The Government Medical Officers Association stated that it would be taking broader measures against it.
We will declare a black week from the 23rd to the 27th of January. We will force the rulers and the health ministry to immediately intervene to solve these issues. All the professional movements will join in unison next week.
The Federation of University Teachers Association visited the President's office to hand over a letter urging to withdraw the government's tax policy. However, the police prevented the group from reaching the President's office, leading to a tense situation. However, the Federation of University Teachers Association decided to meet the President's Director for Special Projects and hand over the letter.
Those present here are the university teachers. Why are we opposing this tax regime? We have 6,000 members across the country. We conducted a membership survey and it revealed that 20% are leaving the country due to the tax policy. Another 50% are ready to leave the country. If 50% of the membership leaves the country, we will have no university teachers left. When the government presents such tax policies, it creates something new for them and the real issue is suppressed. We urge the people to understand the real issue here.
The chairman of the National Movement for the Protection of Rights of War Heroes convened a media briefing on the pavement in Fort Colombo. He said the rulers who came into the power on their laurels of the war heroes have neglected the veteran soldiers. During the run-up to the 2019 presidential election, chairman of the National Movement for the Protection of the Rights of War Heroes, UD Vasantha, led a fast, and Mahinda Rajapaksa, who visited the protest site, promised to solve the issue.
Almost every bank has provided loans of about 90% from their salaries and allowances. As of today, we have to pay a loan interest of about 10,000 to 20,000 rupees apart from our salaries. So in order to pay those installments, we have to be engaged in another profession. I am able to do shoemaking, but not everyone has the ability. The President and the Prime Minister should pay attention to this matter. We kindly request to slash the interest rates that were increased. In the past, the former State Minister Sarath Weerasekara as well as Kamal Gunaratne, who is the current Defence Secretary, regularly visited the protest site in Fort and inquired into our well-being. But they came to power on our laurels and now they don't bother to look at our problems.
Police fired tear gas and water cannons to disperse protesting university students in Peradeniya on Wednesday. The protest was organized by the Student Union of the Peradeniya University, demanding an end to student oppression and the release of 14 student activists. The students attempted to march from the university premises to the Kandy town. However, police had set up barricades opposite the Peradeniya hospital. When the students started to protest at the location, tear gas and water cannons were fired. In the meantime, the Hotel Employees Centre priced the masses on the failure on the part of responsible officials to provide proper solutions to the woes of the hotel industry in the face of the economic crisis. They distributed pamphlets to create awareness to this opposite the Colombo Fort railway station today. Moving on to more news making headlines tonight, the Committee on Parliamentary Business has decided to debate the regulation of the Election Expenditure Bill on Thursday in Parliament. Chief Opposition Whip Lakshman Kiriella told Newsfirst that the ruling party decided to debate the regulation of the Election Expenditure Bill at the Committee on Parliamentary Business, disregarding the objections raised by the opposition.
Before the Committee on Parliamentary Business convened, a special meeting of the party leaders took place with the participation of the President to discuss the regulation of Election Expenditure Bill. Opposition leader Sajith Premadasa, leader of the National People's Power Andrew Kumara Dissanayake and the Tamil National Alliance, among others, did not attend the meeting. In a statement, the opposition leader said that the meeting was boycotted as it is not possible to support the deceitful tactics of the government to deprive the people of their right to vote, which is the sovereign right of the people, especially at a time where an election has already been announced. Following this meeting, the Committee on Parliamentary Business headed by the Speaker met at the Parliament. The opposition participated to this committee meeting. During this meeting, the parties representing the government has proposed to debate the Election Expenditure Bill tomorrow, disregarding the objections raised by the opposition.
A conspiracy is afoot to undermine the people's sovereignty by the President by holding a meeting in Parliament today. Following this meeting, they called another party leaders meeting just for the sake of it. This is the new joke on the democracy in Sri Lanka.
Multiple views on the Election Expenditure Bill were expressed during the parliamentary sitting today, leading to several heated debates.
No matter who says what, if this is passed tomorrow, it will obstruct the election to be held in March. If that happens, anyone can go to court, point out that there is a new law in the country and request the election to be held as per the provisions of the new act. The court cannot override a law passed in Parliament. Then, court will be compelled to rule that the election must be held incorporating the provisions of the law. There are no two words about it. It is very clear. This is a sly conspiracy to use a law to ignore the people's sovereignty, disregard the universal franchise, and to overlook the demands of the people. This is not Hitler's or Mussolini's country. This is a democratic nation.
Will you allow the President to intervene in affairs of Parliament? He constantly claims Parliament should be strengthened and committees should be formed. Is it justifiable for a President who made such claims to act in this way now? This is an attempt by the executive to take over Parliament. How can an individual decide if an election should be held or not? Is there anything he wouldn't do to postpone this election? As a government, we are introducing this to provide greater clarity and transparency. When Anukumara's JVP organizes meetings and post cutouts, people question how they have so much money. When the SJB is distributing buses, the people want to know how they have money for that purpose. It is best for everyone if this topic is discussed and debated.
Since he brought it up, I would like to make this statement. 70 government schools have been donated buses worth 344.2 million rupees as of now. During this program, no one obtains cash to their hand. Our method does not create Mr. 10, 20 or 30%. That is why we are doing something the Education Minister of a bankrupt nation and government cannot do.
අධ්‍යාපන ඇමතිතුමාටවත් කරන්න බැරි දේ අපි කරනවා.
රට බංකොලොත් බව ඇත්ත. හැබැයි ඔබතුමාලගේ පක්ෂයේ සල්ලි තියෙනවනේ. ඔය ඔච්චර ඒක හොඳයි. මම ඒකට වරද්දක් කිව්වේ නැහැ.
පාර්ලිමේන්තු කටයුතු වල කාරක සභාවේ රැස්වීම අද දින පස්වරු 3ට පවත්වන බව සියලුම මන්ත්‍රීවරුන්ට මේ අවස්ථාවේ දන්වනවා.
එහෙනම් අපි කියනවා
Then please schedule the meeting with the President after 3 p.m. That is our request. The President is convening a meeting. We will join it, but only after the committee meeting.
මම එතුමා මොන සාකච්ඡාවකද අපි සහභාගී වෙන්නේ.
ඉස්සෙල්ලා බිස්නස් කමිටි එක තියන්න ඊට පස්සේ ජනාධිපතිතුමත් එක්ක මීටිම තියන්න. එච්චරයි. බොහොම සරලයි.
දැන් ඔබතුමා කියන විදිහට උත්තරීතර වෙන්නේ බිස්නස් කමිටි එකද එහෙම නැත්නම් ජනාධිපතිතුමාගේ සාකච්ඡාවද?
අපි ජනාධිපතිතුමා කරන්නේ හැමෝම පජාත කරලා තියෙන්නේ. හැමෝම පජාත කරලා හැමෝම කුජීත කරලා මේ පාර්ලිමේන්තුවත් කුජීත කරලා තියෙන්නේ. ඔබතුමා උත්තරයක් දෙන්න කරුණා කරලා.
නායකතුමා දැන් මම
Opposition leader, I made an announcement just now that it will be held at 3 p.m. We do not know what will be discussed at the meeting with the President. He might or might not discuss things relating to this debate.
වෙන්නේ මොනවද කියලා. තුමාට වෙන මොනවා සාකච්ඡා කරනවද මේ මාතෘකාව සාකච්ඡා කරනවද අපි දන්නේ නැහැ සමහරට කිසිම අදාළ නැති දෙයක් මේ සාකච්ඡාවට අදාළ නැති දෙයක් වෙන්නත් පුළුවන්.
සම්පූර්ණයෙන්ම වැරදි.
Completely wrong. Ask the Secretary General if you are unaware. We have been called to that meeting to discuss the Election Finance Act.
අහන්න මේ මහලේකම්තුමා පොඩ දැනුවත් කරන්න.
මගේ නිවේදනය වෙනස් කරන්න මට කිසිම හේතුවක් නැහැ.
මේ අමානුෂික දුර්දාන්ත.
This inhumane government is attempting to exact revenge from the people by postponing elections. There is a conspiracy to delay fuel shipments. A meeting has been held at the President's office last week to delay fuel shipments, to create queues, increase the duration of power cuts. Such is the conduct of this government. Minister Vijay Dasan remembers well. That man who swore to protect the constitution is constantly trying to violate it. The final conspiracy is the Election Expenditure Act. The 8th president is trying to set the final trap now.
Passing this bill will not hinder the election in any way. That is because even though we pass this bill into law, regulations need to be formulated to enact it. The chairman of the National Election Commission himself stated yesterday that it will take at least 2 to 3 months. Therefore, the regulations will only be formulated once the election is over.
What I am saying is, the President is engaged in an attempt to postpone the election through this bill. Back then, when an election was announced, people used to flood Sirikota. They begged for nominations. But today, the gates are locked. Should we allow them to rid the people of their democratic rights just because the President's party cannot find sufficient numbers of members, or the SLPP's candidates are not willing to go canvassing to villages?
Transparency International Sri Lanka, People's Action for Free and Fair Elections, the Centre of Monitoring Election Violence and Institute for Democratic Reforms and Electoral Studies have collectively said that the proposed law titled, quote, Regulation of Election Expenditure Bill, unquote, should in no instance be used as a reason to delay the holding of the local government elections. The collective of election monitoring organizations calls upon the government to close the loopholes in the bill and to engage in a consultative process with the public without rushing its passage in Parliament. The Sri Lankan Parliament on Wednesday approved the names of the 3 civil society representatives who need to be appointed to the Constitutional Council formed via the 21st Amendment to the Constitution. Former Minister Secretary Dr. Pratap Ramanujan, former Chairperson to the Sri Lanka Medical Association Dr. Dilkushi Anula Vijayasundara and Dr. Valigama Vidana Arachige Dinesha Samararatna from the University of Colombo were appointed as the civil society representatives to the Constitutional Council. Following the appointment to the civil society representatives, the Constitutional Council can start functioning, paving the way to appoint new chairpersons and members to independent commissions, including the National Election Commission. The chairman and the members of the Election Commission assured the Supreme Court again on Wednesday that the local government election will be held on time as per the Local Authorities Elections Act and the relevant regulations. The assurance was given to the Supreme Court when applications filed to quash the petition by retired Sri Lankan Army Colonel W.M.R. Vijayasundara, who was seeking an order to invalidate the preparations being made for local government election, was taken up. These applications were filed by Ranjit Madhuma Bandara and Professor G.L.P. Pieris among several others. President's counsel Salia Pieris, appearing for the Election Commission, noted that the Treasury has not informed the Election Commission that it cannot make the monetary provisions for the local government election. After considering the facts presented by all parties, the bench decided to call for the petition once again for consideration on the 10th of February 2023.
The Election Commission made a pledge to the Supreme Court that the local government election will take place as per the law. The process is underway, and that process will continue as per the law. President's counsel Salia Pieris made this pledge to the Supreme Court.
The
chairman of Ranil Wickremesinghe's water board has used a retired colonel to file this petition. The government is engaged in failed attempts to delay the election. The commission is not for it. We praise the courage of the commission.
The acceptance of nominations for the local government election opened on Wednesday. Nominations will be accepted until 12 noon on the 21st of January.
The district returning officers, deputy and assistant commissioners as well as assistant returning officers are ready to accept nominations from 8:30 am today till 12 noon on the 21st. As the Election Commission, our duty is to look into the legal matters related to the election. No legal provisions have been specified regarding the postponement of the election in any election act.
The Freedom People's Alliance handed over nominations to the Sri Jayawardhanapura Kotte Municipal Council this morning. The Sri Lanka Freedom Party has decided to contest the local government bodies in the Colombo district as an alliance.
We will contest the local government election from the Colombo district under the Freedom People's Alliance under the helicopter symbol. We are working to hand over nominations for 4 councils of the Colombo district by this evening and more councils tomorrow morning.
The Freedom People's Alliance placed cash bonds to contest the local government elections from the Mathura district under the leadership of Dalasalha Peruma. Meanwhile, the Sri Lanka Freedom Party placed bonds to contest the local government election from the Kalutara district under the symbol of the hand.
As a party, we will contest this election under the theme lending a helping hand to the country. If you want to help the country, join us.
The United National Party also placed bonds to contest the local government elections from the Gampaha district today.
We placed bonds for majority of the district. We will place bonds for the rest tomorrow. We are still not sure whether the election will be held or not. However, we are ready as a party.
The National People's Power submitted nominations for the Lunugamvera Pradeshia Sabhava today. The Samagi Janabalavege also signed nominations for 2 local government bodies in Gampola in the Kandy district today for the local government election.
Colombo witnessed the second shooting within 48 hours, and today's shooting took place in 6th Lane, Kotahena.
Crime Watch.
2 armed on a motorcycle fired several shots at a person inside a car that was parked down 6th Lane in Kotahena at around 1:30 on Wednesday afternoon. CCTV cameras captured the incident and the car fleeing the hail of bullets. A 30-year-old man identified as Ravindran Deepan, a resident of Jinananda Mawatha, Kotahena, was injured in the shooting. The man, who is also known as Dilipan, is a relative of a wanted underworld gangster Sinnaya Gunasekara, commonly known as Kimbula Aleguna. Sinnaya Gunasekara, commonly known as Kimbula Aleguna, is currently detained by the Indian National Intelligence Agency in Tamil Nadu. Kimbula Aleguna's relative, who were injured in the shooting in Kotahena, was admitted to the Colombo National Hospital for treatment. Thereafter, according to a spokesperson from the National Hospital, Dilipan's relatives had beaten up a man who made inquiries about the injured man. This man too was admitted to the Colombo National Hospital accident ward for treatment. An individual identified as Sajit Ranga, also known as Mabima Ranga, was killed when 2 men on a motorcycle opened fire at him close to the Kalupalama in Paliagoda on Tuesday morning. On the 15th of January, a 36-year-old man was gunned down by a motorcycle gunman in the Kumbuka area located along the Piliyandala Horana road. On the 11th of January, a similar homicide was reported from Panamura. On the 31st of May 2022, 2 men were targeted by motorcycle gunmen in Fort Colombo, and since then, over 50 people have been gunned down in Sri Lanka.
When
a crime wave is rising at a rapid pace, no institution can end it immediately. However, we will control this situation. You said around 40 to 50 murders have taken place, and that is an increase. That is not the case. If you take into account 2022 or beyond, there is an increase of 7 to 8 murders. However, what we see today is an increase in violence. This is based on how the mind of the person works and the activities of criminal gangs.
A 65-year-old woman identified as Shanti Padmi had died after an unidentified group had set fire to a house in Yagodamulla, Minuwangoda. Sri Lanka police said several people had set fire to a room at the premises at 7:30 p.m. on Tuesday, and locals had taken efforts to douse the fire. However, the woman was dead by that time. On Monday, she had placed cash bonds to contest the local government election from the Sri Lanka Freedom Party for the Yagodamulla division.
She placed bonds on Monday. She was preparing to have her ID ready yesterday. However, she could not go there. I was in Jaila. At 7:30, I got a call that the house was on fire. I pleaded with them to break the doors and doused the fire.
Sri Lanka police said that the bruises were evident on the deceased woman's body.
India has told the International Monetary Fund that it strongly supports Sri Lanka's debt restructuring plan as the island nation seeks a $2.9 billion loan from the global lender.
India has told the International Monetary Fund that it confirms its strong support for Sri Lanka's prospective EFF-supported program. According to a letter seen by Newsfirst from Indian authorities to IMF chief Kristalina Georgieva, India has noted it will commit to supporting Sri Lanka with financing and debt relief consistent with restoring Sri Lanka's public debt sustainability under the IMF-supported program and ensuring that the program is fully financed as projected by IMF staff. According to this letter seen by Newsfirst, India says that the financing and debt relief provided by Export-Import Bank of India will be consistent with restoring debt sustainability under the IMF-supported program. However, it had noted that the Sri Lankan authorities are expected to seek equitable debt treatments from all commercial creditors and other official bilateral creditors, as well as adequate financing contributions from the multilateral development banks.
We saw some positive news today on the Hindu website. It says that India had agreed with the IMF to support Sri Lanka's debt restructuring plan. As the finance minister, the president had already held discussions with the Chinese government. We are pretty sure that China will also give a positive response to this.
The Chinese embassy in Sri Lanka has responded to the comments made by US Ambassador to Sri Lanka, Julie Chung, in a recent interview with the BBC. The Chinese embassy in a statement said that their US colleagues should commit to self-examination rather than play the blame game.
Beijing has said they are a friend of Sri Lanka, and I'm sure the Sri Lankan people would love to see that turn into action and make sure that there is not a delay and that Beijing really responds quickly without delay in terms of providing those financial assurances. Sri Lanka does not have time to delay. They need these assurances immediately. And we've seen again delays in Zambia and Chad and other countries where for one reason or another it's been held up. And China has been the spoiler. So again, for the sake of the Sri Lankan people, we certainly hope the PRC is not a spoiler as they proceed to attain this IMF agreement.
This was China's response. Extract from statement, quote, "Who is the single largest shareholder of the IMF with a veto power over major policy decisions? Who is keeping printing US dollars with more than $3 trillion US in 2020 alone? Who are those private creditors owning 40% of Sri Lanka's total external debt stock with the highest interest rates? Who sued Sri Lanka in its federal court immediately after the island's default? The public may also like to know how the US have walked the talk to help the Sri Lankan people when they have already received 10,000 metric tons of rice, 9,000 litres of diesel, 5 billion Sri Lankan rupees of medicine and 3 million fabric meters of school uniform material gifted by China. They may also question what are the political preconditions of the US aid while being assured by China's no strings attached commitment in practice. Isn't it hypocrisy at its finest of our US colleague to play the blame game instead of a self-examination? After all, why didn't the US take decisive actions in the IMF for a more comfortable solution for Sri Lanka, or extend grant to the island with the rocket amount of US dollars they print every year, instead of sowing discord between China and Sri Lanka? Both Chinese and Sri Lankan people are wise enough to judge without any foreign lecturing who is the spoiler of our development.
In the meantime, China has expressed opposition over the invitation extended to the Dalai Lama, the spiritual leader of the Tibetan people.
Ministry of External Affairs in India has confirmed the visit of Dr. Jaishankar, the Minister of External Affairs of India. Dr. S. Jaishankar is touring Maldives today and is due to arrive in Sri Lanka after concluding his visit.
The Bureau of Rehabilitation Bill, which was debated in Parliament, was passed by majority vote. At the end of the debate, the NPP demanded a vote on the draft, and the Bureau of Rehabilitation Bill received 23 votes in favour and 6 against. At the time when this draft was presented, allegations were raised that the activists of the struggle would be suppressed under the guise of rehabilitation. After it was challenged before the Supreme Court, it was declared that this law is limited to the rehabilitation of drug users alone. In other local developments, opposition leader Sajith Premadasa says that members elected to local government bodies should act according to a code of ethics.
The Horowpathana Balabandala meeting of the Samagi Jana Balavegaya was held under the auspices of opposition leader Sajith Premadasa.
We are working on a new journey. We make sure that each candidate that will contest the local government election will have to adhere to a code of conduct. Any chairman or minister is prohibited from direct or indirect contracts. If you put your name to the list with the purpose of implementing personal contracts, then please withdraw yourself from contesting this election. We hope to turn these local government bodies into friendly institutions. If you make any mistake, the people will overthrow you.
දෙයියන්ගේ නාමයට දැන්වත් ඉල්ලාස් වෙන්න. අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා මේ පළාත් පාලන ආයතන සුහුරු පළාත් පාලන ආයතන බවට පත් කරන්න. මිනිස්සුන්ගේ පැත්තෙන් වරදක් කරොත් අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම ඩොට් ඒක හොඳට මතක තියාගන්න.
Taking a look back at a local story once again, China has expressed opposition over the invitation extended to the Dalai Lama, the spiritual leader of the Tibetan people.
Chargé d'affaires of the Chinese embassy in Sri Lanka, who were recently called on the Mahanayaka Thero of the Malwatu chapter of Siam Nikaya, Most Venerable Thibatuave Sri Siddhartha Sumangala Thero, and stated that the government and people of China, including in the Tibet Autonomous Region, strongly oppose any foreign country to receive the Dalai Lama in any name. A statement from the Chinese embassy on Twitter noted that this is because the 14th Dalai Lama is absolutely not a simple monk, as he self-claimed, but the head of the feudal serfdom and the theocracy in Tibet prior to 1951, a political exile disguised as a religious figure who has long been engaging in anti-China separatist activities and attempting to split Tibet from China. Chargé d'affaires of the Chinese embassy in Sri Lanka, Hu Wei, has emphasized that China and Sri Lanka have been firmly supporting each other on issues concerning each other's co-interests, including the Tibet-related issue. He had noted that both sides, especially the Buddhist communities, must prevent a sneaky visit of the Dalai Lama to the island to promote Tibetan independence and safeguard the China-Sri Lanka historical relations from being damaged. Sri Lankan Buddhist monks recently invited exiled Tibetan spiritual leader, the Dalai Lama, to make his first visit to the island.
And with that, it's a wrap of your news for tonight, but do stay with News First as Face the Nation is coming up next. For the News First team, I'm Mariam Ganavijaya. Good night and take care.